gotta pull these green screen recordings because these green room recordings because Dean's got this dance to our theme music that you and Tim Golden I think hold the crown there for a green
That was some
room
good
dance
music.
during the intro. Welcome back everyone to another episode of the MSP Cyber Roundtable. We are here with Dean and David from Helpt. We'll get into what Helpt does later. But how's your Friday, guys? What's going on here? We just had some chit chat about like the scariness of privacy and but like what's keyed up for the weekend? You guys got what's coming up tonight?
Yeah, I'm hopping in the car in a little bit. I'm going to go down to Las Vegas. It's a beautiful place where there's lots of heat and fun things to do a little a show in the retail tech space. And then straight after that, we're going up to ChannelCon. Dean,
Well,
you'll be there.
Before we get to ChannelCon and all that, wait, retail tech, like you got a fun gadget? Like what's the thing? You got to fill us in.
All right. So we're a part of an association called the Restaurant Solutions Provider Association. And so just the same way that, MSPs kind of work in the small to medium business enterprise space, we end up working with folks that are doing the retail tech stuff, like the POS systems, the tablets, anything that you would see the second you walk into a place where you could buy something. They support that. And so we're a part of that group. We go out to Vegas to party and talk about our things, and hopefully good things happen from that.
Well, that sounds fun. In the food industry, sometimes they serve you food at those shows that's pretty special, but you guys are in the tech angle. I don't know. You might just get
That's a good point.
You got to take some photos.
Done. Absolutely.
All right. And then ChannelCon's next week, which I'm going to be there. You're going to be there. Dean, you're going to be there?
Yeah.
All right. So this is a big deal for, in vendor space, it's a fun show. But, this is the CompTIA event, right? This is the annual CompTIA member event. And it's fun because CompTIA is the largest IT association, and they've become somewhat of the town square of the IT industry. So vendors and service providers like big tech and small tech and everyone gets to sort of meet in this place, and everything's supposed to be democratized in that place. Yes. CompTIA tries to be vendor neutral. All the booths are 10 foot. Like even if you're a $1 billion company, you get a 10-foot booth if you want a booth. That's a fun event. So I'm looking forward to that. We're in Atlanta this year, right? But all right. So before we get into today's content, I would love for you guys to tell our listeners a little bit about how you guys ended up at Helpt. So it doesn't matter who goes first, but I would love to hear the story of I was walking along one day and ended up in the MSP industry, and somehow that ended up, and now I'm at Helpt. So whatever that story looks like.
Holy moly. That's almost exactly my story. You nailed it. We were working, Matt and I, my partner, we were working for a company that sold widgets, and we were providing support to these massive conglomerations, and they were expecting these crazy SLAs. And I kept having trouble with that. I had a service desk. I had people all over the world, but I couldn't cover this little gap of time. And so I went out to try to find partners that could help me with that. And I could never find anybody that was good enough. And so luckily we had the opportunity to build what was hopefully more than just good enough in Helpt. And here we are doing the thing that I was hoping to be able to do. Our first client was actually somebody that was referred to us that said, hey, I'm an MSP. We said, we can take care of that. And then all of a sudden we found ourselves in the channel. Looked down, looked back up, and we're like, holy moly, here we are.
I fell into the channel seems to be a going theme in the channel. Dean, how about you?
Well, I used to be an MSP, so I've been in the channel for a decade, and I spent a lot of time in the channel, specifically in our MSP on Reddit, in MSP Geek, and MSPs R Us Discords. And so last year at ChannelCon, this weird dude with a mustache comes running up to me, and he's like, hey, are you Dr. Zoidberg? Because that's my handle everywhere. I'm like, oh yeah, always nice to meet a fan, to quote Kelvin. And that was David. And that's how I met Helpt. And so for the rest of last year at ChannelCon, David and Matt just talked to me about the dream of what they were trying to build. And they were sort of talking to me in the sense of like, are we crazy? Like, you're an MSP guy. Like, is this a bad idea? So that's how I first met them. And I got really hooked on the energy. So eventually they paid me down.
How in an in-person space, you're standing at a conference, does someone relate you to Dr. Zoidberg? How did that happen?
So I make Dr. Zoidberg stickers that I put on stuff. I don't know if that was the only way David figured it out.
Okay, so
I've been stalking Dean for like years, and I knew exactly where he was going to be. I walked up to him and I was like, "Hey, are you that guy?" I knew full well exactly who he was.
To our green room conversation, Matt, he found me on Waze, and
I've been creeping him out ever since. I mean, that's just how it goes.
All right. Well, the stalking. I watched Baby Reindeer last week, guys. I don't. The stalking. It's not funny this week. The stalking jokes. Anyway.
I watched it with my wife. We got about 3 or 4 episodes in, and then the bad thing happened. I won't ruin it for anybody. And we were so put off, we couldn't pick it back up. We ended up waiting another like month.
It's okay.
Before we watched the rest of it. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Heck of a show.
I'm not sure if I'm happy I invested that time. All right, so we got to do a lecture, guys. So today we're going to be talking about cybersecurity certifications, some of the certifications generally, and then over the next several weeks we're going to drill down actually and talk about them more specifically. But with that, I'm going to jump right in here. So I just want to talk about certifications. The need for certifications is not going away, right? And I don't care where you are in your career. I think for many of us, and I'm a perfect example of this. We think certifications are sort of like a thorn in our side, or like it's this treadmill, it's this like annoying thing, it's a checkboxing exercise. You think they don't mean anything. They actually provide some value to the world. They do a couple really important things. So first of all, and I know that you guys all know this, that like the idea is that they certify skills and knowledge, right? The reason that's important is because if we rewound 20 years, the way you got into the IT industry was like out of your bedroom, right? There was not, 25 years ago in particular was really like the dawn of enterprise IT. So there were not educational tracks for it. Everyone was an amateur. There was no experts really at all. As the industry grew, right, we needed when we needed to demand high quality skills, there needed to be a way to find them. And there are a lot of us that think that we're pretty valuable and we don't need an outside source of validation. But the reality is, as an employer, if you're trying to find someone to help you, you're not an expert, right? That's why you're hiring an expert. So you do need some way to relate to the labor market. And I think we would all agree that our universities are not necessarily like if you come out with a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, you have a lot of background knowledge and a lot of theory that over the course of your career is going to be super valuable, but you basically know nothing about even entry level skills, right? So as an employer, not particularly useful if you're trying to hire someone in their first IT job, but a certification, particularly if it's paired with that education, right? Or without the education, says, okay, at least I know if this guy's not an asshole, right? Excuse the language, that he gets through the interview process. I know when he lands on like a Cisco router, he's going to be able to X, Y, or Z, right? So that's super important. The reason we're talking about it on this show is because in cybersecurity, there's a humongous demand for cybersecurity talent. So this is in the service provider, in your customer organizations. They need cybersecurity talent more than they need regular, technical infrastructure talent. It's rare right now. There's not enough of it to go around. And so the need, like people are looking harder, they're hunting harder for those skilled individuals. So any of us that have those cybersecurity skills are going to make the whole world easier to find us, right? If we certify. So that's why it's important. So anyway, I'm going to get off my stump, and I just thought that's an important talk to give to the community because I was anti-certification until I wasn't. I'm now enlightened on why it matters to other people if it doesn't matter to me. In cybersecurity, there's just a few brands of certifications to be concerned with. So I'm just going to talk about some of the certifying authorities today. We've got ISC squared, and I'm an ISC member, so I should have this off the top of my head, but it's ISC squared because it's oh man.
Assist. I'm Googling as fast as I can.
Oh man. They need to work on their branding.
Information System Security Certification Consortium.
It's international. Yes. Okay. So it's International Information Security Systems Certification Consortium. They were really geeky when they put that together, clearly. But the international is an important point here. So if you are in the United States and you have an ISC2 certification, the US government says, oh, we validate your skills. If you're in Europe, same thing. The government certifies your skills. If you're in China, same thing. Okay. So in terms of recognition in the world, in particular, the CISSP is the most well-known cybersecurity expert certification in the world. Not all of their certifications have that renown, but we'll dive in more into the ISC squared certifications next week. But that's who they are in the world. CompTIA, super popular in this service provider industry because as a service provider, if I walk across 10 service providers and I ask them, well, what's the biggest problem in your life? 7 of them are going to say, well, I can't get enough engineers, right? And so those entry level skills are super important. We need more of that in the world. So CompTIA, I think they have a monopoly on this in certifying that entry level talent for the help desk, for the service provider. And then they have this roadmap that goes up towards the expert. So, you can come in on an A+ or a Network Plus, and you can there's a whole track of continuing ed that you can perform to sort of work your way up the skill tree in a service provider org. And of course, we're going to the CompTIA event next week. So big deal in CompTIA. CompTIA also has international renown. They're also respected by governments all over the world, but they go beyond security into the other technical skill sets. We've got 2 other organizations here I want to talk about on this slide. One's the EC Council. They've got a few certifications. The one that they're most well known for is the Certified Ethical Hacker. So penetration testing firms like to stamp their penetration testers with the CEH. Some of this is technical skill and some of this is ethics. So it's important to have people that have promised to do good on your penetration testing teams. ISACA, super important from the perspective of community networking, I think. Now they do have the CISM and CISA certifications, which are well known, particularly here in the US, but I've seen them elsewhere as well. But what's particularly notable about ISACA is they have these incredible chapter houses in every major city in the world, and a lot of nowhere places as well. And so if you're looking to network with other people in the cybersecurity industry, becoming an ISACA member or even as a non-member visiting a local chapter is a great way to get to know the other people in your city, in your region, right? So I just want to point that out. But of course, they've got the auditor and the manager certification. And then we have the GIAC certifications, well known across the world for having the hardest tests on the planet. I think in the cyber industry, people consider the GSEC to be pretty hard, the GIAC to be pretty hard. so the GCIH, these are hard certifications. They require actually demonstrated technical skill sets, sort of like you would see in a Cisco lab. Not only do you have to pass the test, but you have to be prove you have to prove that you can do things. So that's particularly notable. I will say that outside the cybersecurity industry, people don't really know what GIAC is. So if you're being hired by a cybersecurity department, they love this because they're like, oh, this guy knows what he's doing. But if you're trying to get hired by someone that's not a cybersecurity department, like you trying to get hired by a CEO, they're going to have no idea what that certification is. Anyway, that's it. Here's a list of entry, intermediate, advanced certs if anyone wants to follow what a pathway might look like. The U.S. Department of Defense has this appendix. It's actually an outdated law now, or an outdated regulation, but it's called 8571M. And if anyone wants to go look at that, that's another good reference in terms of a career pathway. With that, I'm ready to take off my certification hat. I know that that's like the most boring talk we could have had on a Friday afternoon, but should we talk about something a little a little more customer centric?
Well, let me ask you a question about that. So, because we get this a lot, and I got this at my MSP a lot. We hire a lot of entry level talent, and they'll say in the interview, when you ask them, "What do you want to do?" I want to do cybersecurity. So where does some kid or somebody who's later in life starting their IT journey, who wants to end up there, what cert should they look at first?
Oh, I almost always recommend the Security Plus from CompTIA. It's a great place to start, but I will tell you, it depends on where you're starting from. If you're already an engineer and you've been an engineer for some years, it's not too hard to jump into Security Plus. However, if you're starting from zero, and this is your entry position, that is a difficult first ring. And if people can't pass that test with a week or two of study, I would not recommend that they grind on it. I think that there are easier places to start in CompTIA. You could start at an A plus or a Network plus, which are easier to study for, easier to achieve, and then work your way to the Sec plus with experience, right? So normally the Sec plus. However, not everyone's ready for it, and I'm not a big fan of like grinding away for months and months so that you can pass this memorization test. It's not gonna get you where you want to go in your career. Really, you got to learn the stuff.
So what's a good home lab skill for that person so they don't grind away? Like, what's something good that like the average newbie could home lab to practice that basic security skill?
This is going to be dumb, but I'm just gonna say it. Reading the cybersecurity standards. So pick any standard, and CIS is a great one to start with because it's like medium sized. It's not 300 safeguards, right? But it's also not 20, right? So it's over 100. Read that standard and stop anywhere you don't understand something. And go research that topic. And I think that
I like it.
that will get people pretty far. If you download from CIS the standard as a PDF, it's under I think it's under 50 pages. So it's not like this 1,000-page tome you have to go through. But that's a pretty well-rounded intro to cyber, I think.
I like that. Cyber meant something different back in my day. Anyhow, hope this is an older audience here. So Matt, you wanted to talk about customer playbooks. Sorry, segue.
Well, no, I want to know about customer playbooks because it's like this humongous problem space for every partner that I have, which is having consistent, reliable processes that lead to the outcomes you're looking for in a reliable way. Is like, it's actually that it sounds so boring, but it's if you can do that, okay, you will be incredibly successful and profitable. And if you can't do that, you will never get there, basically.
I agree with you. We used to always say, like, I know what good looks like. And I think that when you think about it from the perspective of the customer journey, it's just it's esoteric, it's philosophical, it's all of these different things until you put it down on paper. And I think what we're trying to do and to achieve today is really talk about it, put it down on paper, and then make it easy. I used to be called the simplifier, and it's because I need to make things simple so that we can process them and so that we can take the steps that we need to take. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully I can make this work.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see if I can do that. There we go. And I'm sharing it in a funny format because I'm going to switch slides here in just a moment. But I wanted to start with this idea that, a customer playbook is, from a lot of our sales perspective, is something where you're thinking about who I'm going after, like who's my sales target, who am I trying to target, what's the messaging that I'm trying to come up with when I try to target that person. But when we think about it in the perspective of being able to provide this fantastic customer service, to be able to provide this thing to our customers that's going to make them want to keep coming back, want to expand their engagement with us, it becomes something where we're thinking about what it looks like, what good looks like what do we actually need to have down on paper? What do we need to start to actually hold ourselves accountable to be doing? And how do we continue to grow on that? And so I was trying to summarize this, but I probably should have just read it. We emphasize on a regular basis playbooks and personas and things like that for sales processes, but prioritizing them for after the sale is just as important so that we end up with that long-term success. One of the things that Dean always talks to me about is the NPS, Net Promoter Score, how to make it so that your people that you've brought on after doing all this sales, playbook and targeting messages and things like that are ones that are going to go out there and continue to parrot all of the great things that you're doing for them. And so I went a little cheesy. My man, Ben here, he says it takes many good deeds to build a good reputation and only one bad one to lose it. And I think because we're so focused as an industry on sales, on bringing in new customers, that we could do amazing, amazing things. We can talk about fantastic things that we can offer. We can get to a place where we've really sold somebody on our services. And they could say, hey, rose-colored glasses, they're really cool people. The second we do something wrong in the rest of the process, we're going to ruin our reputation. And so I think it's super important for us to think about this entire playbook from the customer success side. So I think if I switch over here, yeah. I'm not the art director at Helpt, but I did create this morning. It's pretty colors. You see just kind of a really quick, flow chart. It was supposed to be like a Candyland style thing where we were talking about the different steps.
Oh, I could roll dice on that.
There we go. I'll break this down further into the 3 steps, but for now, I just wanted to kind of outline everything. Personas are things that we've always talked about, right? Like when we're thinking about sales, when we're thinking about the person that we're trying to get after, when we think about an ICP, how far away is a persona from an ICP? Like these are things that are really easy for us as we continue to try to grow our sales. Communication guidelines. This is kind of wild, but go online and type in your favorite brand and type in style guide or communication guideline or something like that, and you're going to see that there is publicly available all of the things that they do in their communication, the way they communicate, the way that they deal with. Dean asked, how many of the personas in my head do I listen to, David? Dean, all of them, literally all of them, because you need to make sure that everybody's happy. So do whatever they say. So don't worry about anything else.
I want you to stop there because this is like a tremendous topic, that communication guideline thing. I feel bad that I don't remember who it was. Some MSP owner told me they send everyone. I could go figure it out. They told us on air here. They send everyone to Disney training for this exact reason, right? Like Disney has a customer communication brand training program, right? And it's not really specific to cartoon characters, right? That's not what it's about. And it's something that's really missing in our industry. And when it's present, your customers notice, right? They notice and they say, wow, this is a really valuable relationship, I think.
I agree. And it's wild. I mean, it's little things and big things all at once. Like if you were to say to somebody, this is one of my big mantras. I never say no problem in response to something, because no and problem are both negative things. I always say all good, or, some positive thing. And that type of communication guideline, that type of vision and goal means that our interactions are completely different. Maybe somebody doesn't think about it, but they've never seen me say no problem to them. They think, David's a cheery, positive guy because he's always saying all good. Dean, I know you've got a couple of rules for text, like, don't act alarmed if the building's on fire, things like that, like the way that you communicate to make sure that, it's a overall positive experience. Dean, do any come to mind for you? I know you're pensive.
Well, a big part of that is you learn, if you have this common established language that you use at your organization, which everywhere that any of us have ever been where we've had a good support experience, they are doing this. If you've ever been to McDonald's, like, you're going to be referred to by most McDonald's as a guest, not as a client or a customer. You combine that with, then you teach your employees with this common language. You're going to match the intensity of the emotion that your client has, but you're not going to actually match the tone. And you combine those two things together, and that is just the magical recipe to handle any customer interaction. Because now if I'm angry and I come up to, engage with you and I'm animated, you're animated. You're just positive. If I'm chill and demure and cool, you're chill and cool and demure along with me. And you can influence the other party when you start to learn to use that common language, because you're not having to think about editing your words like Dean does all the time when he's like, don't swear, don't swear, don't swear. And you use that ability to lead and pace to then manage the interaction. And if done right, and if done across an entire organization, everybody who works there acts that way, your client leaves, even if they didn't get what they wanted. So if I went into a McDonald's and I wanted a burger, or no, I want a milkshake and the shake machine's broken, that's a better example, because that never happens.
Never happens.
If everybody in there uses the same language, matches my intensity, but keeps that positive tone, I will leave pleased, even though I'm sad I didn't get my milkshake. And that really is the magical kernel of what David's saying.
I've taken a little bit of that into my own personal life, actually, since I've been studying customer success. And when I call someone else's support line, I am the most pleasant person that could possibly be. You know what? The outcomes are different.
You get more bees with honey than vinegar, right? That's just another one of those sayings. I think that, Matt, to your point, like, the next time you call into some massive conglomerate, national company, and hit their service desk, see what types of words they use, be aware of it. They're going to say things that are just a little bit different than how we typically interact as friends. But it's all designed. We can take Disney and take their training, and we can apply it to us and have a great outcome without having to spend all that money on, research and the development that it takes, and, all of that. So, I love borrowing things like that. Hopefully, Disney doesn't get mad that I said that.
They sell it commercially.
Oh, perfect. Then perfect. So, as I'm looking at this, we can all read this off, the steps here, onboarding process, support and escalation procedures. I'll go deeper and deeper into those in a second. But I think that I'd challenge anybody that's watching this to take these, put it down on a document, and write what they think that their vision is, what their, way of interacting or way of doing these things is, and just a couple of sentences, and then hand it to somebody else in the organization and have them take a look at it. And I think that what we're going to have is we're going to have a situation where people think like, oh, of course I know how to communicate appropriately. Of course I know how to do a solid onboarding process. Of course I want to make sure my support and escalation procedures are aligned. But when it comes to actual practice, it's hard unless you're practiced, unless it's something that you've put down on paper, unless it's something that you've set objectives and goals for yourself and grown into that. It's hard. So I know that's why we're here.
If you're an MSP, which I'm assuming if you're watching this, you might be, a really good way to do what David just said is check and see, does everybody on the team unprompted call them clients or customers? Do they call them tickets or issues? Do they say it's closed or resolved? That all means similar things, but that's a great way to see the delta on your own team if everybody's not really speaking the exact same language, if there's a little room for improvement here.
Matt, before I go, sorry.
Well, Dean's throwing these at us like rapid fire. I'm like, I want to know which word's the right one. Maybe that's a distraction.
So I think that's the thing. Like there's something that's right for you. There's something that's going to align with your vision, with your goals. If you're a company that says, I'm going to call ourselves Helpt, and we're going to be as helpful as possible, we're going to be as positive as possible, as whatever. And we put that all down on our mission and our vision statement, and we try to align ourselves to that. That's going to be different than the guy that runs the sewer truck, where all he cares about is making sure that things are taken care of. And so I think that there's no right answer. Dean, correct me if I'm wrong. It's what you want to align yourself with.
Well, and to add to that, so I'm operations, so I'm a pain in the butt all the time. When I'm working with David and Matt and we're making scopes of work for things, what do I start every SOW off with every time, whether you want it or not? I started off with a table of definitions where we define words and what they're going to mean, so they mean the same thing in every SOW. And we define words like client, end user. What does that mean here? What do we mean when we say that word? What is our client expected to understand when we say that word? Because now it's in the SOW. All of those things, they're trivial things. They're very small individually, but they add up to this common language everyone's speaking. And a big part of, and I'm sorry if I'm dramatic foreshadowing, David, a big part of why this all works from a psychology standpoint is ultimately we're individual humans. And every time we have to make a decision, there's a possibility that we'll basically make the wrong decision. Not that it's binary, but they will make the wrong decision. The more you add in a common playbook of words and processes and things that everybody's using, the less likely I am in a moment to have to make a decision and then make the wrong one, which then means I can focus all of my mental energy on the client and on what they need and on why I'm here. And I don't have to think, like I said earlier, like, Dean, don't swear. Like, I don't have to have that in my head because that isn't the language we use here. That isn't the way we treat people here. And I can just focus on Matthew here and, explaining why Waze is or isn't a good map product to use because it tracks you.
Yeah, I can't help but think of all. So I mean, we're all in this jargony space, right? And I'm in cyber, so it's like doubly jargoned, right? It's like tech jargon plus compliance jargon plus security jargon. It's like, and there's all these words that mean different things to different people. It drives me. That is the thing that drives me like a little batty. And I just try not to use any of the words that mean different things to different people. But you're right that having that definition set is super important.
Well, how do you do that in cybersecurity? You pick a framework, right?
Yeah. We do pick a framework and we say, look, we're going with the definition of like the CIS definition of this thing, right?
Yeah.
Or I say that, hey, this is the cyber definition of that, not the technology definition of that. This is not the lay definition of that. This is the technology definition of that. But I like generally, I have to just avoid some words because they mean different things to different people, and that's unfortunate, right? But it sounds like I'm missing some steps. So I'm gonna take this one home. Thanks, guys.
That's it. All right. Before I move on to kind of doing the 3 steps, where I'm just going to literally take all of these 10 items and I'm going to put them in the 3 steps. Are there any, Matt, that you want to dive into based on what you're seeing so far?
Everything. I run a company, right? And I am chief cook, and I'm always thinking about how can we make this sales playbook better, but also how can we make this customer success playbook better, or how can we make this engineering issue playbook better. And it's where like a big portion of my brain lives, and so I feel like I'm getting a little consulting session. So you just do your thing, man.
Well, good news. We're gonna make this a 4-hour webinar, so we're just gonna keep going, right? I think that one of the things that I always talk about is the fact that we're all consumers, and to Dean's point about, McDonald's or whatever, like you're consuming things all the time. When you interact with a customer, you have to think about the fact that they're you just on the other side of the table. And I think that we end up in situations where things happen and they frustrate us. It's like, oh, I was trying to buy this thing from this person and they sent me an email about a demo, and then somebody else reached out to me and that was frustrating. Do we then look at our processes and say, hey, if somebody books a demo, we stop whatever other automation that's happening so that they don't get anything else? Maybe we don't, but we should. All right, I'm gonna go because we promised 3 steps, and I think there's a song about 3 steps.
There could be 4. There could.
So I'm very simply, I'm gonna do my little mustache bracket here, and I'm gonna say map. That's the first step. We have to do is map. We literally have to take these ideas of the personas, the people that we're interacting with, and we have to put it down on paper. There's a whole bunch of tools out there that will ask you things like age ranges. What are the majority of the age ranges of the people that you're dealing with? Sorry, what's the age range of a majority of the people you're dealing with? Occupation. If you're an MSP and you're focused on specific verticals, you'll probably know that. Like, are you an AC type, MSP? Are you focused on, accountants, law firms, whatever? Like, you'll kind of already know something about your persona. So put it down on paper. HubSpot, actually, I'll call it HubSpot. They've got a great one. You literally go onto the HubSpot persona creator, you type in some details, you pull some things from drop downs, and then you get this little table, and it's like, this is the person. And then you can start crafting messaging around that person, but we'll get into that in a second. We have our personas. I said we were going to get into that in a second. We're literally getting into it right now. So then you create your communication guidelines, right? You got to think about things like vernacular, this cyber. If I were to try to talk to you, Matt, as a customer, I'd have to be thinking about how I'm going to communicate with you so that it makes the most sense. As anybody who's listening to this right now can tell, I like to talk a lot. It's not efficient. If I was talking at the same, wavelength that you were, it would be a much more efficient exchange. And that's what we're hoping to kind of get here with this communication guideline setup. Put it down on paper, understand the key words that you need to use so that you can really resonate with the folks that you're helping. Next section, scrolling down. I know this is kind of janky here. Onboard and action. It's still all the same 10 steps, but now we're going to separate these 3. Onboarding process. How many times have you heard somebody say, hey, I signed up for this vendor or I signed up for this thing, and it's 2 months later, I haven't gone through the onboarding process, or somebody's never reached out to me, or something's happened? It's pretty regular. So, we have to look at our onboarding process. We have to look at it from the perspective of our customers. We have to go through it ourselves. I'm an automation guy. I want to be able to plug things in and have them go. Half the time, I don't even look at what it looks like from the customer's perspective, but we have to know what that onboarding process is going to look like. Dean, you asked a question. Is a persona the same thing as your ICP? I think persona begets ICP. Does that make sense? Like, persona is going to be maybe groups of people, but your ICP might be more specific qualifications that those groups have, so that you're drilling down further. I know you asked the question, but help me out.
If I'm going to a nerd convention, my ICP is I want to go to a nerd convention, but my persona is I'm going to be at the Warhammer table the entire time.
Flip flop.
I'm having
flip flop.
Let's try and ask it.
Yeah, flip flop.
Well, here's the way I think of it. I think that like your persona could be those Warhammer geeks, right? And those little figurines are like $50 a piece, right? And if I was gonna have
little figurines,
all right,
sir.
Sorry. The paint costs $50. Anyway. But like if your Warhammer geek has no cash in his pocket, right? He wouldn't be the ICP, right? Because he's broke as a joke. Like not the ICP, but he's still a Warhammer geek, right?
Yeah.
Is that the difference you're talking about, David? Like
that's what I'm thinking.
The persona is the person, right?
Persona's the person. The ICP is the one that's got what you want, the qualifications that you're looking for. And so there is a group of nerds. There's a group of nerds that have normal jobs, like Dean, that can afford the $50 paint. And there's a group of nerds that just like to watch people like Dean paint stuff on YouTube, probably. I don't even know how it goes anymore. Dean, does that help? I know you tried to.
He is never going to play Warhammer with us.
Listen, Warhammer is a very affordable hobby to get into. Don't let these two throw you away. You just need a small point army to get started. Have your mom bring these to the local Games Workshop store.
Perfect. All right. So going on to the next little section here, support and escalation procedures. I am certain that everybody knows what it's like when somebody calls up and they've got an urgent issue. I'm not certain that everybody has a 1, 2, 3 step guide to what they're going to do if that happens. If you're an MSP and you're a one-man band, maybe the phone comes to you and that's it. Maybe you're one-man bands with somebody that helps on the weekends or something, or somebody else that it might go to. And so I think that having that down on paper, having your support and escalation procedures, however detailed they are, knowing exactly what they are is going to be, light years ahead of where you might be without knowing them. I know that was a lot of filler word. The next thing is feedback. While we're actioning things, the last thing we need to do is get feedback. If you're not, and I know that the VCIO stuff is a thing, and I know that QBRs are a thing that are talked about on a regular basis. If we're not gathering feedback, then all we're doing is throwing our ideas out into a vacuum. We have to be able to be iterative. We have to say, here's what they are. This is and Dean loves this. This is the process. It's down on paper. And now if we get feedback to change it, we can look at a line item and change it, as opposed to saying, this is pretty much what we do. And then somebody says, hey, I don't like it when you do that particular thing. And we go, okay, well, I'll try to fix that, versus saying, okay, that particular thing is on, paragraph 2, line A. Let's update that. Let's push it out to the team. Feedback, super important. Scrolling down to this next one, improve and increase. I think everybody wants to increase their engagement with their customers, especially when they're a revenue generating customer.
Wait, slow down. So you said everyone wants to engage more with their customers. Actually, not everyone understands the value there. So can we slow down a little bit? Right? Like if you're not engaging with your customers, that presumably means they're not engaging with you, right?
Yeah.
Which means they're not thinking about you until the time that they get billed or the time something breaks, right?
Right.
Which means the only time they think about you is when there's a bill or something breaks, which is
negative.
Not particularly positive, right?
Absolutely.
So more engagement means what?
Whatever service that it is that you're offering, if you can come in and prove that what you're doing is a positive thing, it's going to be a lot easier to increase the engagement that you have with the customer. It's easier to add more to a customer than get a new customer. And so the idea, I think, if I'm answering the question, is we've got somebody that's already bought off on us that said, hey, I'm interested in those things that you're doing. And now all we have to do is prove that we're able to do it. And once we prove that we're able to do it, we can go back to them and say, hey, are we doing it the right way? Maybe there's something else that we can help with. This goes back to Dean's net promoter. It goes back to this idea of really ingraining ourselves in our client's experience.
You have to understand
our engagement.
The value you're delivering. Because where I think a lot of service providers fall flat is they assume the mechanism of the engagement itself is the value add. It is very much, I give the example all the time, it is you pay someone to cut your lawn. The value is not them walking around and showing you every blade of grass they cut or giving you a report that says I cut 1,000 blades of grass. The value is when they leave, you go outside, you're like, wow, this lawn's amazing. It's perfect. And this guy just comes, once a week and does it. And so in that case, the engagement is simply knowing they show up, hearing and seeing them outside and not actually speaking with them, because that's not the value you're receiving. The Disney example you gave earlier, if you go to like the Disney Star Wars exhibit, the value is not that they have staff that are collecting tickets and checking you in to make your lightsaber. The engagement is their staff are immersively making you think that, you know, you're in Mos Eisley Spaceport. And in every case, there's a high level of engagement, but it's tailored to why you want to be there, or what you're buying. It's not just highlighting and saying, hi, I'm here to check you in for lightsabers. Look at me. I'm great. You're my 300th person I've checked in. Look at the engagement. I don't care about, none of us care about that. We want, you know, if you're there with like your kid or your niece or your nephew, you want the stormtrooper to notice that they're dressed like Darth Maul, or that they're dressed like a Jedi, and make a comment as they walk by. That's the engagement you want. And it might so happen that they're also clicking a little box to check you into the room and get you set up for your kyber crystal. But you don't care about that part. You care about the experience. And that's really what
recollection. Did we talk about kyber crystals last time you guys were on? Is that like where this conversation went?
No, and very quickly, if I could get on the soapbox, the Acolyte says that you can change the color of your lightsaber with your emotions. In Disney, that's not okay.
No, we had someone on the show who said they were hacking the NFC to change the color.
Oh my god.
Anyway, so you can hack the lightsabers. Anyway, wait. So I want to go back. I want to rewind to something, because you were talking about something that I've come to understand is super important, but I did not always know is super important, which is that the job to be done is not the same thing as the gain or the pain relief, right? And so as a startup entrepreneur, I've been trained in lean, which is, you know, includes this value proposition study that I think anyone watching this should, if you've never been through creation of your own value proposition canvas, you should go through that. You need to understand, like, crystal clear the difference between the job you are doing and the value your customer is receiving. And if you don't understand it, your customer is not going to understand it either. So that is super important. They need to understand why they're paying you and why they should pay you more. And I want to go back to the reason that's important is another thing, Dean, you said that was super insightful, which is, and I've heard it said another way, which is the existing customer sale is the best customer sale. And I think a lot of people think they need more customers to grow their business. And you don't need more customers, you need better customers. And you don't have to find the better customers. You can create the better customers, right? If you treat them better, they will treat you better, right? You'll have a better relationship. There's more value exchange, which means more dollars, right?
What's the easiest way to solve an operations problem? You throw more bodies at it. What's the easiest way to solve a cash flow problem? Throw more customers at it. And in either case, that is hand wavy, not in actuality, but that's hand wavy easier to do. But if you have that realization that if I improve what I already have, I can do so much more and get so much more value out of it for less effort. That's the exact same logic an IT person is going to apply to, for example, automation, right? Like, rather than being Dean and saying, I have a bunch of different, you know, Plex servers and things at home, so I'm gonna have one box per server. That is Dean. Dean does that. You would say, like, I'm gonna run Docker, and I'm gonna have one box with, you know, a bunch of containers that are each gonna do a separate thing, because that is more efficient, easier to manage, less expensive, and smarter, and overall a better experience than Dean having one box per server purpose in his basement, which aggravates his wife. It's the same logic with your customer experience in your customer playbook. It's no different.
So Matt's asking this question, and I'm not sure if he means growing the customer base, right? Or the customer, like, sort of breadth or depth with the customer relationship. But you can put numbers on this stuff. I know when it comes to advanced cybersecurity services, it's a 30 or 40% top line increase to layer on those advanced cyber values onto a managed services customer. And I would imagine I'm not familiar with the exact numbers, but maybe you guys are familiar with some industry numbers on this. When you move from a lightly managed service or an unmanaged service to a fully managed, like, high value managed service, which you can do when you have that deep customer interaction playbook, right? There's a similar amount of, like, relationship growth there, right? And it's high value.
I think to answer Matt's question, I'm going to try to make an analogy for when it comes to, like, your home internet. You know, how much effort do you think there is for your, ISP, your home internet provider, to take you from 150 megs a second to 300? The answer is none. They click a button, they send an order through, and it happens. And I think that when you've got an existing customer, you don't have to worry about the onboarding process, which is something that we talked about. You don't have to worry about the effort, the resources that are going to be taken to actually get them, to capture them as a customer. And so now we're talking about this huge upside. Now, it's not an infinite upside, it's finite because, these customers are within budgets and they have, revenue targets and goals and things like that. That means that they're going to be finite, but you can get those 30-40% increases. I don't know, Dean, what do you think? Am I missing anything? Onboarding
specifically, like once again, going back to that, like a lot of people watching this are probably MSPs. Well, a lot of MSPs that are not big are owner-led sales. And so even if you're good at it, let's say you're awesome, like the average MSP sales cycle is like 3 to 6 months, maybe longer. And you're one person, there's a finite amount you can do to only bump your revenue up by meeting with new prospects. And let's assume you close all of them. Like how many of that could you really do? Like 12 to 24 a year. And so that's why you can't abandon the fact that you already have people that are engaging with you, that are paying you, that hopefully are happy to do those things, that are very likely willing to spend more money with you. And that's way more efficient. And importantly, if you're that MSP, it doesn't have to be done by the owner, which means that you can still keep doing all of your net new while someone else at your organization is going and farming all those existing clients and growing and expanding their consumption of what you do to maximize their value.
We just took a left turn into revenue, guys, which is super important. But David, how much of this did we?
This is great. I'll go slightly back. We'll narrow down our course. The handful of other things here is like, account management, which is what we were talking about, the revenue, upsell, cross-sell, retention. Like those are all really important things. I don't remember what the saying is. I think I tried to say it earlier, but it's something about, new customers costing a lot more than existing customers. When we go over to the right side, measuring with metrics and KPIs, Dean uses that, hey, I'm a landscaper and I'm going to mow your grass, but I'm not going to tell you that I mowed 10,000, blades of grass because you don't care. But as we are the service providers, knowing the things that will make us better is very important. If we can know what our SLA accuracy is, if we can know what the response times are, I guess that's all SLA accuracy. If we can measure all of the things that we're saying that we're promising to our customers and be able to point to them and say, hey, we're here, we're good, your grass looks fantastic, go ahead and take a look. And in the background, just make sure that we're achieving all those things that we've promised. We've got a really good experience. One of the things that's not really on here is that expectation, which is also something that we talk about a lot. I don't know, maybe I missed it on the other one, but the idea of setting that expectation so that you can say to your customer, I'm measuring to these metrics because these are the expectations that you should have because this is what we told you was going to happen. If I say to you, I'm going to get back to a ticket in 4 hours, which is crazy, and I do it consistently in 3.5 hours, you should be happy as a client. And so these are the types of things that will only come from from measuring, all of your metrics, having your key performance indicators, having those things readily available to rely on to improve. Tech and tools used, that's super simple. Everybody loves using tools, and continuous improvement. I always say, what's the biggest room in the world? The answer is the room for improvement. With everything, we have an opportunity. Yeah, thanks, Dean. Thanks. I should have waited. I should have been like, hey, what do you guys think? What do you guys think? Like a call and response, but whatever. One of the biggest things here with the metrics, with the processes, with the guidelines, with everything that we've been doing, we put it on paper, we define it all, and then we improve it. It's impossible to improve a process that you don't have documented well enough to improve. And so we can continuously improve the last step because we've got a guideline. And, hey, we just pulled some call recordings and it looks like our agents are using resolved instead of completed. But we said we were going to use completed. So let's go back and improve that. Hey, here's our metrics for our SLAs. We've hit this, we've reached this. Here are our revenue goals. We've hit this, we've reached this. We haven't. Why haven't we? These are the types of things that can be improved once we have them all on paper.
Well, this sounds like a lot. Particularly the paper part. I know a lot of us engineers have a paper phobia, and I don't or documentation phobia, or writing things down, like documenting phobia. So this is the I'm going to open the curtain, right? We have you guys are at Helpt. This is the world. This is basically the reason you guys founded the company, right? Is to create value in this space. We've got thousands of service providers out there they have these great relationships with their customers, but growing those customer relationships is challenging because of all these things we just talked about. So how do you turn this into a business, right? Tell us about give us the Helpt mission here.
So I'm gonna ask a question, and I'll ask it this way. Dean, have you ever been on a call with somebody that's selling something that is just slightly out of reach based on your current resources?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So Helpt is really that gap bridging entity. We say to somebody, and it all comes down to how this all started. We told Verizon that we would do 24/7. We couldn't do 24/7 at the time. And so we made a promise that was just a little bit out of our range, and we weren't able to do it without help from another partner or another resource. And so anytime that you're not hitting your metrics, where you're looking to continuously improve, you can come to Helpt and have us take a little bit of the load off, be a little bit of a buffer, get you to that point where you have the time to go in and document everything, get you to the point where you're meeting all of your expectations of your customers, and then some, hopefully, and then be able to really step back and look at it. I think that's how we operationalize it. I think that's how we also monetize it.
So I mean, what are the common cases here? So is this a standardized thing, or you guys do a custom scope of work based on need? How does this work?
It's super standardized. What we basically do is say, we'll be the front line for you. Somebody calls in, sends a ticket in, we're going to take our agents and we're going to apply them to those calls and tickets. If you're a one-man band and you're out on site, you can't take that call, you can't take that ticket, you don't know when you're going to be able to get to it. We can be the ones that start that process. If you're a state big organization and you've got 50, 60 techs, but you've promised everybody that you'd have a 95% call answer rate or a 98% response rate within a certain amount of time, but you're at 93 and 95 or whatever percentage it is that you're not quite achieving, we can come in, be that support, help bridge that gap. I don't know if that answered the question, but
no, I think best in class customer communication and best in class time to respond. That sounds like something that most of our partners need. I think, I can't wait to see our partners work with you guys, really. All right. Well, what are our takeaways for today? If you were going to leave our audience with do we want to do three steps, or do we want to do one thing?
Homework. I want to have
homework.
This is up. This slide is up. So anybody that's made it this far, I'd say literally take this, put it down on a document in Word or wherever you use create your documents, and type your ideas out there. Throw down what you have in your mind on paper, and then, like Dean said, socialize it. Ask a certain thing. It doesn't have to be the whole sheet. You don't have to take the sheet, print it out, and hand it to somebody. But if you say, this is really the most important thing to me, I'm going to go ask my service manager, or I'm going to go ask my technician, or I'm going to go ask somebody within my organization how they treat this thing and see if it aligns. I think that just that is going to mean some improvement. So homework.
Yeah, I got it.
Sorry.
I have a recording, and I'm taking this screenshot, and we're going to go take it into marketing and success next week.
Nice.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, guys, and thank you to the audience. Next week, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, the three of us are at a conference, ChannelCon down in Atlanta. Because of that, actually, we're going to have a pre-record. Garrett Grajek and Bill Lauterbach from UATest joined us. We're going to talk about why two-factor authentication is never enough, and what you can do about it. Tune in next week for that. And as always, like and subscribe. Thank you, everyone.